I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from yourblackworld.net, and many of you know about the legacy of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm in Tulsa right now for a fatherhood panel with Etan Thomas and DeMario Solomon Simmons and some others that care about fatherhood in the Black community. And as I was browsing around the Culture Center in Greenwood, which is the area of that Black Wall Street once existed, I ran into an extraordinary brother by the name of Dr. Anthony L. Marshall. Dr. Marshall is in the Department of Social Studies with Tulsa Public Schools at Booker T. Washington High School, which is an historic high school. And people have told me before that Dr. Marshall was one of the great experts on Black Wall Street, where it came from, how it operated, what happened to it. And he told me some extraordinary things last night, and I just felt that other people need to hear this because Black Wall Street, as you know, is an important part of Black history. And if you followed what I did this week with Minister Farrakhan in Chicago, many of the principles that we talked about were principles that were embodied in the existence of Black Wall Street. Now, I have Dr. Marshall on the line. How are you doing today, my brother?
Good morning, boys. I am doing fantastic. As you said, I too am getting ready for the panel discussion on fatherhood this morning. Thank you very much for having me.
You know, the pleasure is all mine, my friend. And I've done enough of the talking. I would like for you to, if you can, start from the beginning. First of all, let me ask you this. What was Black Wall Street? And then we can go back to where it came from and all that stuff. Tell people what Black Wall Street was for those who don't know.
First of all, you have to understand the term Black Wall Street actually came from Booker T. Washington when he was making a visit here to the state of Oklahoma, and he passed through the city of Tulsa. And he saw an enclave of African-American economic success. He saw an area of the city of Tulsa, which was actually really considered two cities, in which African Americans were thriving. They had their own bus lines, they had their own hotels, grocery stores, businesses, lawyers' offices, pharmacies, you name it, they had it right in their own community. And from that observation, Booker T. Washington made the comment, wow, this is Wall Street. So that's where the term actually came from. But you have to understand again, the Black Wall Street, as we commonly call the Greenwood area of North Tulsa, was a very busy and active, economically successful area that was primarily occupied by more than 10,000 African Americans in the early 1900s. That's Black Wall Street.
Okay. So how did Black Wall Street come into existence? Did somebody just wake up one day and say, I want to create Black Wall Street? I mean, how did Black Wall Street come to be?
It's an interesting story. What a lot of people do not know is that along the Trail of Tears, when the Choctaw, the Cherokees came to Indian territory, they brought with them their slaves. And those slaves, according to the Reconstruction Treaties of 1877, were released by the federal government from the bondage of the Indians. And another requirement of the Reconstruction Treaties, in addition to freeing their slaves, was to provide their slaves with land. And so many of the slaves then came together, actually to protect, former slaves at this point, came together to protect themselves and began building little small communities throughout the state of Oklahoma. As a matter of fact, in the late 1800s, Oklahoma had more all-black towns than any other state in the Union. And one of those areas sprang up along the Arkansas River. And that's basically when Tulsa incorporated, we became a part of the city of Tulsa. So that's how we got started in Greenwood. But interestingly enough, because of segregation, our community, you have to understand again, Tulsa, while being one city, was really two cities. Our community, because of segregation, became very self-sufficient. As I mentioned to you, we had our own bus line, which ran down Greenwood, understanding that Greenwood was the main thoroughfare for this whole community, which was bounded primarily on the south side by Archer Street and on the north by Pine. So again, Greenwood was the focal point. And along Greenwood, you had more than 100 black businesses, which consisted of 2 theaters, a hotel, banks, a bus line, pharmacy, grocery stores, haberdasheries, all in that same community, and of course the focal point of any community of African American descent during that time was our black churches.
So
that's how we.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize. Go ahead.
I was about to say, and so that's how we began to grow and make all. Actually, it was because of segregation.
So you're saying that because we couldn't go and spend our money with white folks, and we couldn't go and just get jobs for big corporations or whatever it was in existence, we found a way to become self-sufficient. We were able in this community to make our own money and recirculate our own money and create prosperity unlike anything seen throughout the country. Is that correct?
Exactly. You have to understand, many African Americans worked as maids, cooks, butlers, chauffeurs in South Tulsa, but because they could not spend their money in South Tulsa, they brought their dollars, their paychecks back to North Tulsa. It said, and our dollar began to circulate within our community. And of course, when your dollar circulates within your community grows. And that's one of the reasons why it became such a vibrant place, particularly economically.
Wow. So let me ask you this. What happened to Black Wall Street? Why does it not still exist today?
Well, first of all, you have to understand the devastation that took place June of 1921. While it's typically called the 1921 Tulsa Race Riot, I prefer to refer to it as the 1921 Race Holocaust, because in that, with the fire bombings and the violence that took place, you had a whole culture of people basically destroyed. And so, and let me just make one thing clear, Dr. Watkins. Many people talk about the alleged incident in which Dick Rowland allegedly assaulted Sarah Page in an elevator. While that may have had something to do with it, that was simply maybe the spark. There had been a lot of jealousy of the prosperity of the African Americans in the Greenwood area. And so that one incident basically fueled the fire for a group of vigilantes to attack the North Tulsa community. And when Greenwood was burned, and in the aftermath of the 1921 Race Holocaust, virtually every business was destroyed. More than 1,000 businesses and homes were destroyed in basically a 24-hour period. African Americans were herded to internment camps. They marched them to Mohawk Park and to the Tulsa Fairgrounds, where they held them until, if you worked for a white person, he could come and give you a pass, and you had to carry your pass with you while you went to work and then come back. So after the incident, we were not allowed to rebuild initially because the city of Tulsa passed an ordinance that said all construction after this had to be done by brick. And, of course, the brick company refused to sell bricks to the African-American community. But with the fervent legal mind of attorney B.C. Franklin, who had his business destroyed, and by the way, B.C. Franklin was the father of the great historian Dr. John Hope Franklin, he appealed the city ordinance to the Oklahoma State Supreme Court and had that ordinance overturned. And the African-American community was able to begin rebuilding. As a matter of fact, maybe not to the extent that it was prior to 1921, we did rebuild the Greenwood area. And once again, because of segregation, became a very vibrant community. However, with urban renewal and moving many of the black businesses and homes out of the community in the mid-1960s, Greenwood once again died.
So let me make sure I got this right. You said they had internment camps, like almost like, internment camps. what's the deal with the internment camps? I mean, what was the basis for incarcerating the people of their community?
Very much like the Japanese were interned right after Pearl Harbor in 1941 because of concern that perhaps blacks would rise up and fight again. They actually placed them in internment camps. It was said it was for our own safety that they placed them in the internment camps. But yes, you were literally required to remain in those camps. And they had the National Guard surrounding the camps so that African Americans could not leave, again, without a pass. And basically the only way you could get a pass is if you had a job and your white boss came and got you out of the internment camp. But you had to return after you left work.
Now, did they put any white folks in these camps?
If I could finish that point of the internment camp, interestingly enough, after all that was done, finally when African Americans sought redress through the court system, it was determined that the statute of limitations had passed and that they were not entitled to be compensated. However, we do know that the Japanese were compensated for being wrongfully interned. Remember, these two were United States citizens.
So they didn't put white folks in the camps. They didn't try to quote unquote protect them by putting them in the camps. They just put the black folks in the camps. Is that correct?
As a matter of fact, the court said that that the African Americans were the cause of the violence, and so they were basically the ones that were punished. No, you did not have any whites actually punished, and when you consider that. According to some accounts, more than 300 African Americans were slaughtered in that 24-hour period, and many of them dumped into mass graves. As a matter of fact, there's a known gravesite right at the corner of 11th and Peoria that still exists today. But again, there's no true number that we can determine, but there are estimates as high as 300 that were literally slaughtered, but not one white was prosecuted.
So So let me see if I can clearly see the picture here. Somebody says that there was an alleged assault of a black man against a white woman, and in connection with this alleged assault, there was the destruction of hundreds of homes and businesses in the black community. People of color were put into internment camps and only allowed out if they worked for a white man who signed them out of the camp.
That is correct.
So the people in the camps were not compensated for what they went through, and no whites were prosecuted for their role in the creation of this slaughter, this massacre. Am I correct on that?
You are correct. And if you will allow me just to clearly help you understand that eventful night when it began. Dick Rowland was arrested. He was arrested, and he was taken to the Tulsa City Jail. Well, you have to remember the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, were very prevalent here in the city of Tulsa as well as the state of Oklahoma during this time period. Realizing that Dick Rowland probably would face the same fate that many African Americans faced when in the judicial system during that point. Several black men went to the jail in an effort to protect him from a vigilante mob, white mob that had already gathered on the steps of the jail seeking to have Dick Rowland brought out so they could lynch him. And a white man asked a black man who was armed, "Nigga, what are you going to do with that rifle?" And the black man responded, "I'll use it if I have to." A scuffle ensued, and a shot was fired. That's how the riot really got started. And from that point, whites then went into the Greenwood area, Black Wall Street, began looting, burning homes. They fired machine guns from Standpipe Hill, which was a very high point above the Greenwood area. And there's also allegations that the National Guard actually flew a plane over and dropped a bomb. Now, that has not been totally substantiated, but several eyewitnesses have stated that they saw a plane fly over the area and drop a bomb on the Greenwood area. during this whole melee.
So what would be the rationale for anybody to drop a bomb? I mean, for the federal government to come in and drop a bomb on Greenwood? Or what do you think is what rationale have people discussed as potential reasoning for this?
Total annihilation of the Greenwood area. Total annihilation of the Greenwood area.
Wow. Well, you know, I saw the pictures and I've seen them. You know, I'd seen them before I got here, but being in the culture center really allowed me to connect with this legacy of this once great area. And I saw, anybody who looks at the images will see that the area is just flattened. It looks like nothing's left standing. So I want to ask you, you know, years later, as a resident of this area, do you think that people are as well educated on exactly what happened at that time as they should be, white and black folks? What is your take on that?
No, I don't. I still don't think here in the city of Tulsa that people are totally educated not only on what happened, but the repercussions. When you look at Tulsa today, which is still basically a city divided, when you look at the economic growth of South Tulsa compared to the basic stagnation in North Tulsa, you can still see the impact of the devastation of this 1921 rape holocaust. When you look at the dry zones in terms of no grocery stores, when you see that there's no nice restaurants in the North Tulsa community, you can still see the economic impact of the 1921 race holocaust. I mean, for instance, let's go back. Even we think about the Gurney Hotel. In 1921, suffered $65,000 in losses during the riot. Can you imagine if that hotel still existed today, the economic impact it could be having on that community? And it's not there anymore. And that's one thing that I have challenged even students at Booker T. Washington High School. We have a great class as part of our International Baccalaureate Diploma program at Booker T. Washington. And one of the areas that you can study is economics. And I have challenged those students to actually do a study to look at the economic impact of the 1921 race holocaust on the city of Tulsa. Where would those businesses be but for 1921? When you start talking about generational wealth, many families lost everything they had and never regained it. So we have no generational wealth to pass down as a legacy because of the 1921 race holocaust. So when you think about that devastation that night, it's not one isolated incident that happened years ago that we should simply forget about, because the repercussions from that night still exist today.
Well, you know, I am extremely grateful, Dr. Marshall, that you were willing to take the time to explain this to the public. The minute that I heard your story and heard it explained the way you explained it, a time that a couple of other guys told me that I needed to talk to you, and the minute I heard you explain it, I just knew that I needed to share this story, have this story shared with as many people as possible. And I hope that people who are listening will understand that we need to rewrite history. We need to reframe the way we think about history. We need to reconsider those taboo questions, those questions that we were raised to believe that we could not ask. Like, for example, was integration good for black people? When we go see this Jackie Robinson movie, should we celebrate integration, or should we see that as part of the key to our demise? It doesn't mean that segregation is necessarily the answer, but perhaps we need to renegotiate our integration and achieve some degree of self-sufficiency, especially when you look around and you see the epidemics of mass incarceration. You see black unemployment that will never go down. It won't go down very much. It will always be twice the past whites until we own our own businesses. You see what's happening with our educational system, where a huge chunk of our kids are graduating from high school and can't even read. So we have to really think about where we want to go forward as a people. And I argue that where we've gone to this point should have nothing to do with where we move forward from here, because if we continue to do the same thing and use the same strategies, we will get the same results. So, Dr. Marshall, thank you very much for taking the time to explain this to us. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you later on today.
Yes, absolutely, my brother. And for those of you who are listening, thank you for checking us out at yourblackworld.net. And until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.